Alright, here we are with Humblewood. We didn't start the fire, Season 1, the introduction. To my left we have...
Tyler, I'm the DM.
Peter playing Pipsqueak Smallpaws, the Jervin Cleric.
And I'm RD playing Luna, the Looney Luma.
And I'm... Oh, shit, sorry.
Nope, that's cool.
I jumped the gun. I'm just excited.
What are you?
I throw spells.
Sorcerer.
Yes.
I'm Devin. I'm playing Tintooth until he dies. And then I play Redbeak until he dies.
And Mark, unfortunately, wasn't able to join us today, but he is playing Bucky, who is a...
Servant.
Oh my god. Servant.
Servant.
Servant barbarian.
Servant Barbarian?
Servant. As
I
in,
mean,
like
yeah.
a deer person.
Like a deer person. Right. Okay, so how do we want to do this intro? The pitch for Humblewood, then the system we're using, then the pitch for this game, then the characters, same as always.
I'll do the pitch, and then we'll go around. I'll do Mark.
So
Humblewood is a setting that was kickstarted for D&D 5th edition, but we're actually playing it in a modified mouse guard setting. And what it is a idyllic forest woodland that is inhabited mostly by bird people, but also by some other deer people or mouse people or hedgehog people or what have you. But the bird folk are the dominant races in this setting. And there was, several years ago, a scar on the land, a sort of a mystical fire brand that was burned in. And people learned to live with it, but recently it started to expand and send forth fire elementals and various beings of flame that have started to terrorize the surrounding areas and cause mass exodus of refugees fleeing from the fire to the more inhabited parts. In addition to this, there is a huge bandit problem that has risen up in the east, mostly from what are called the humble folk, which are the non-bird folk. They're terrorizing the area. So the bird folk are caught between these two problems, the fires that are spreading and the bandits that are pillaging, and it's the job of the heroes to kind of deal with these problems as they arise. And that's basically the gist of the setting going into it. So why don't we go around and do our characters?
game pitch.
And
what do you mean by game pitch?
Like the pitch for your specific game.
The pitch for the game is that there are problems that are facing society, and there are not clear solutions for them. We have refugees who are encroaching. We have bandits who are terrorizing the area, but the bandits are somewhat justified in what they're doing. And the problem with refugees is that there's not really a great solution for that. You can't just shove them into a city because the city will become overpopulated. It's not easy to just incorporate a mass exodus of people, but at the same time, you can't just turn them away. So the idea for the game is that the players have to face issues that don't have clear, easy solutions. You can't just go beat someone up and solve this problem.
And that's why we're not using D&D, because it doesn't handle social nuances.
Yeah,
It literally
does
doesn't
not
have the
handle
options.
nuance very well. Yeah, it is just a combat simulator. And in the actual Humblewood game, what it turns out is there is a necromancer who is raising a spirit of fire, and you just go and beat him up, and then that solves everything.
Oh.
Wait, is that the plot for Humblewood?
Yes.
There's like an evil necromancer?
Yeah. And we're not doing that.
Ooh.
I mean, haven't you read all the description about like how necromancy is bad multiple times over, stated explicitly? Obviously, that's something afoot.
Yeah. So we're not doing that. We're taking a bit of a different route. And we're trying to pivot more into a little bit more social nuance, and having characters sort of come to grips with conflicts that you can't solve by beating something up.
And we would talk about the system of mouse guard, but we did in the previous game, so we don't need to.
It's a burning wheel system.
Like we did, yeah, a whole breakdown of the system.
Maybe
last time.
we will sort of briefly mention that this is an adaptation of mouse guard, and that we have changed the skills a bit.
Most of the changes you made just unshackle it from the character creation of mouse guard, really, just so.
Yeah, like
other
it's
variations.
not a huge pivot. Like it's basically mouse guard. But if you're listening and you're familiar with mouse guard, and you encounter some situations where you're like, "Hey, that's not exactly how that works," that was probably an intentional change that we made.
Yeah, like we solved our problem with attack, attack, attack.
Yes.
And yeah.
Okay, now let's go into characters.
Okay, so my character is Pipsqueak Smallpaws. He's a German cleric. He's pretty young, and yeah, he's from Alderheart. Most of his family / clan live in the upper trunk. They're artisans and what have you. But he decided to, go and help people. So he, he went from living in the upper trunk to the underroots, to the underbelly of society, because that's where he's needed the most. And yeah, that's like where he's been. He's the cleric of Ardea, which is the chief deity of the system. But I think as we discussed, we feel that Humblewood is more of a pantheon focused setting. So it's not like, oh, I cannot do anything with other deities. It's more like, oh, you're a general cleric, but this is like your primary focus, I guess. So expect some other things as well. And yeah, he's small. He's like smaller than most Jerbeans, so he's like 2 feet tall. He looks like one of those what do you call those, like pretty mouse or something like that. Those with like long legs. Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those weird ones with the long, kicky legs.
Yeah, long kinky legs and long tails and so on and so on. That's him. So
I am playing Luna. She has a reputation of being a little bit loony, and she is a Luma. Luma being one of the bird people in Humblewood.
she's a pigeon.
Basically. But
I thought she was a dove.
she's more like a dove.
What's
It's
the
just
big-
white.
doves, to be fair.
To be fair, she is, yes. She is kind of white like a dove, but with slightly gold sheen to her feathers, because, magic and shit. And she is magical. And I kind of tried to base her a little bit more like the concept of like a wild mage in D&D, because originally I was thinking to go that direction, but we don't really have that. But just imagine someone who's a little bit all out there. She is raised in the Avium, which is the center of magic essentially, and her parents, Larry and Lorna, were archivists there, and she was very gifted and got into a lot of conflict with people because she isn't the brightest at social skills, but does think that she is. She walks around with a stolen tome, but she's borrowing it if you ask her. And it was borrowed from the Avium, and it's as big as she is, and she carries it around on her back and will often use it to reference it. She's obsessed with magical beasts and using magic for literally everything, including standing up, essentially. So, yeah, a little bit, and she looks like this. She's not very smart, but she thinks she's brilliant. And I think that summarizes her to an extent.
Was it from the library that you stole it?
From the Avium itself, she stole.
From the
It's
Academy of Sorcery.
I mean, you're allowed to check out libraries.
No,
Not the way she did
this
it.
is a book.
Not from the restricted area.
This is
I was gonna say, I know that she's not allowed. But that's
This
probably
is definitely a
what
book
she
that she
Those
wasn't
books get
supposed to
super
even
afraid.
see.
That's why when Harry picked it up, it was like, please no. And Harry's like, I'm going to interrogate you. And he starts waterboarding the book and screaming.
Yeah, this book has
I
been
have no
heavily
idea what
marked
you're
with her
talking
own
about.
notes.
Yeah.
She's drawn all over the book with her own anecdotes.
Generally, if a book is chained down to something, you shouldn't be taking it out.
Magic.
Alright, so I'm Devin. I started playing Tintooth. Tintooth was a possum druid. I based the character, and by based I mean ripped off, Jason Mendoza from The Good Place, who was a Jacksonville, Florida swamp person, and that's what Tin Tooth was. They cared about people, they cared about things, they cared about people assuming that crime was morally bad, because that was a bunch of bullshit. Tin Tooth died, now I'm playing Redbeak. Redbeak is a Dracula parrot and a ranger, and has the highest stats possible in Devin succeeding at combat. And that made Devin happy for a while. Those characters.
Okay.
I don't really have a... Sorry, I know I intoned that I was done, but I figured I might add more because you guys went long.
Go ahead.
That's pretty much it. I didn't really want to go super all over the place with either of these characters, so I made them fairly focused. Tintooth was druid, problem solving. Red Beak was physical issue, and like all the stuff we had deficiencies in, like tracking or labor, I kind of filtered through this character. That's it.
Okay. And I'm going to talk for Mark, because unfortunately Mark was not able to make it tonight.
It was a plague.
Yeah. He is playing Bucky, son of Benny. And Bucky is a deer person who is kind of skittish unless you really push him, at which point he snaps and goes all barbarian mode on you, in which case he becomes super strong, super scary, and just, really steps it up. He is strong, he's tough, he has a special set of horns that sets him apart from other servants, that distinguishes him as marked for greatness, that he's always kind of had to live with. He apprenticed under a ranger and learned a lot about that. Not a lot of social skills, but he does his best, and he always tries to help people out wherever he can. And his main thing is that he is a very strong laborer, and whenever the situation arises, he will hunker down and work the best that he can.
Okay. So, if you also need to cover?
Okay, do you want to pad this out? We only got less than 15 minutes. Can we add 2 more minutes in?
Sure.
Hopes and dreams. Talk about your fears.
Why
don't mention
we,
that thing Peter posted.
Why don't we discuss the problems that we had with Mouseguard and the ways that we have tried to fix it? As Peter alluded to, we found when we played Mouseguard before that attack was always the best option, and feint was always kind of a dead end because feint only destroyed defend, and defend was not really the best thing to do.
Defend only lets you recover up to your losses, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
You don't let me supercharge?
And when you think about what a feint does, really it's more about drawing out an attack and misleading them into an attack of opportunity for you. So we changed it so that feint actually disarms attack, so that now you have a good option versus attack. It's not always the best thing to take. And it also, in a way, buffed defend, because now you can use defend without fear of being disabled, and actually get back up to your full HP.
Also, in a setting, defend beats feint, so you have a little bit of counter, so...
Yeah, we just find that works better. Another thing that we changed was we adapted the skills slightly, and that's honestly still kind of a work in progress. We might change it up a bit more for Season 2. But Mouseguard is a very skill-based system. So when we sit down and we have a cleric and a sorcerer and a druid and a barbarian, the main thing that differentiates them is actually their skill set. So that was something that we adapted as well.
I almost feel like Mouseguard, like the version you're doing, would be better if you renamed attack, defend, whatever, as literally rock, paper, scissors, and just like set up a wheel so people could reference for what counters what. Because the narrative implications of attack, defend, feint, or whatever don't really seem to matter in our thought process. Whereas it's all like, guys, you're going to throw rock, scissors, paper, dove, Spock.
I would say that in the book they say attack is anything that advances your goals. So I would say just rename it to advance.
I guess.
And
but
I
like-
would say rename defend to recover. The problem with your thing is that rock, paper, scissors is only 3.
Well,
and
no,
there are
it-
actually 4 options.
Yeah, but you could actually make it 5 because that's how the math of it works. There's actually a 187 version. It's not important, but like you could do a Pokemon rock paper scissors wheel with what Mouse Guard is doing, and like just pull away the sort of narrative justification for it because every action you're taking in a Mouse Guard combat is to advance your goals. You're not picking Feint for fun.
Yeah.
Like I'm not picking Feint because narratively it makes sense for me to feint. I want to advance my goals by beating this asshole, and if I feint, I'll get advantage on the next thing to do, whatever, to like start doing a thing.
Let me say that I'm very interested to see what Torchbearer does because they said that they're not basing it off Burning Wheel. They're basing it off Mouse Guard.
That would be refreshing because Burning Wheel is a hot mess.
Yeah.
And living in Canada, we know a thing or two about hot messes in the summer. Jesus H. Christ, it's like plus 40 in here.
Yeah, we're all sweating.
Yeah. Well, also what we changed was expanding it to all the races. So everybody that picked a race had to go to define what they do rather than you're a mouse. You know how to forage for food and climb and stuff.
Yeah, because nature is a huge part of the Mouse Guard system. So we had to redefine nature to be specific to each individual race. So each person who made a character when they picked their race had to define 4 aspects that they felt were intrinsic to their race, and those were their nature elements, as opposed to the standard for Mouse Guard, which is foraging, hiding,
Running away.
etc., etc.
Yeah.
Forage, hiding, eating your young.
Only sometimes.
But so why don't we go around and just say what you guys picked for your nature, just so that everyone knows.
Okay, so for Jerbeen, I picked their communal, nimble, they are good at jumping, and teamwork.
Oh, and for me, as a Luma, I picked I was very flighty, and not meaning I fly because I can't, but like very flighty, those type of people.
Run away.
Yeah, I don't like to commit to things.
Not the face.
Much like myself. Deceive people, survive/endure, and speaking, elocution, giving speeches.
So for Tin Tooth, I think the 4 things I chose was like playing dead, being pitiable, eating garbage, and like socializing or something. And for Redbeak, who's a Dracula parrot, I picked strike fiercely, be an extrovert, hunt prey, gather treasure.
And Mark, for Bucky, picked skittish, powerful, wild, and endure.
Perfect.
So those all kind of represent. I mean, every character uses the same mechanic of relying on their nature, but each character has a different nature, so they're applicable in different things.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think you'll see that come into play. We see like you use the communal aspect of your nature a lot. You use elocution, and you use strike fiercely. So
Deceive a lot.
yeah, you deceive a lot.
We all play to our
Yeah.
strengths. We get those 12
Lying
dice
is my
rolls.
strength.
You need those guys so bad. This game's
So
brutal.
it actually makes your race it makes it a very interesting choice. And honestly, I think that it's better than the D&D approach of just giving you like +2 to agility, or sorry, dexterity, or like stat bonuses, or stone cutting, or being able to detect trapdoors, because it really reflects in how you want to play, and it makes a character feel very differently from another one. Like if we had a Luma cleric versus a Jerbeen cleric, they would still play very differently because you would have your natural inclination towards elocution and deception, and you would have it towards communal spirit.
Yep.
Yeah, I definitely agree. What you're saying is valid, but you're comparing to D&D, and like as I've thought of saying, anything's better than crawl. I think that's all we need.
Okay, great. Well, I was Tyler.
Peter.
Hey,
Hey.
you there?
Me?
What's your name?
Oh, RD.
And I was Devin, and this is sponsored by Nobody. Signing off.